Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Ask Amy on this special eclipse day. We have a question this time from Jane, and I think it's a question that a lot of people can relate to. So Jane asks, she says, I've been plagued with low self-esteem all my life, which I realize is inevitably caused by relentless habitual negative thoughts. Usually I seem to have enough understanding of the principles during the day to not suffer their effects. So to not suffer the effects of those habitual thoughts. However, when I wake up at 3:30 a.m., they seem to be uncontrollable and upsetting, really believable. I've learned to stick my headphones in and listen to a book, which is a great fix, and I usually get back to sleep. But I'd love to sleep without my iPod. I'd love to know your take on this, whether I should face them and learn not to be afraid of them, maybe when it's not critical to have a full night's sleep, and whether that might be a cure. So it's a great question, Jane. A couple different pieces to this that I think are going to be really helpful for people to hear. So first, I just want to say something about low self-esteem. And I think maybe you see this, Jane, but for everyone else that's listening to this, it's really helpful to see no one has low self-esteem. So even how you say it, again, it might just be the way that you say it. I've been plagued with low self-esteem all my life, which I realize is inevitably caused by relentless habitual negative thoughts. It's not even so much that we have these negative thoughts that then cause low self-esteem, as if low self-esteem is this thing. It's this affliction. It isn't. It's simply that we have tons of self-esteem, but what we live in is the moment-to-moment feeling of the thinking that's there in our minds, moment to moment to moment. So every one of us is chock full of self-esteem. We have as much self-esteem as we had when we were little kids running around talking about being pro baseball players and pro golfers like my son, and we were just going to take the world by storm, and there was nothing that we thought we couldn't do, and we were better than everyone at everything. That's in us, you know, just a peace and a confidence. That is who we are. But as you point to in your really great question, we get caught up in lots of thinking, and some of it is about us, and we get caught up in the content of that thinking. So when we're thinking, I'm not good enough, I'm not good at anything, you know, whatever it is, all that content, all that stuff, it's just story. It's just stuff that our mind, stories really, interpretations, subjective, biased stories that our mind comes up with. Well, we look at that. We forget the truth. We lose touch with the us, the peaceful, confident us that's in there, and we get caught up in the stories. And when we do, we start feeling like we have no self-esteem. And then we walk around in the world, you know, a lot of people innocently saying, oh, I have low self-esteem, I always have. You don't have anything, because when your thinking settles down, you're fine. It's just that there's a lot of habitual thinking there that we're very, very used to looking at and getting caught up in. So your question just gives a great opportunity to speak to that, because this whole self-esteem thing, I think, is a really common misunderstanding. And it's really great for people to see, what if that's true? You know, what if I'm full of confidence? I just feel the thinking that's there moment to moment, and it just so happens that that's kind of full of some negative stuff once in a while. And when we're caught up in that and we're looking at that, that's what we're going to experience as us and as truth. It's not us. It's not truth. But we get duped. We get caught up in that, and it starts to look like the truth. So that's just a little tangent there on self-esteem. So your real question, though, your question is about being able to kind of, it sounds like, see that thinking for what it is to some extent, or maybe you just feel kind of better during the day, and so that thinking just isn't there in the same way. It doesn't look the same to you, so you're all right. And then at 3:30 in the morning, you get jolted awake by all this negative thinking, and it feels different. You know, it feels harder, it feels truer, and it feels for you like your only escape is to put in the headphones and listen to something and kind of distract yourself from all that thinking. So it's interesting. I think a lot of us experience this. There's like this middle of the night thing, you know, maybe we're peacefully sleeping. Our conceptual mind, that storyteller that's telling us all these negative habitual things often, has kind of gone to sleep. And we're still thinking, but we're kind of more in that space of us and life before all our thoughts and concepts, before all our habitual negative stuff. So it tends to be pretty peaceful there. I mean, unless you're having a horrible nightmare, it tends to be pretty peaceful. So it's very common. I hear this from people all the time, and I experience it too, of waking up, and it's like our conceptual mind wakes up too, and you get kind of flooded with all of this stuff, you know. And one of the things I just want you to see about that is it's absolutely no different than when you're awake. It's just that as that energy, as the feelings attached to all that thinking is coming through you, it just, you know, like you say, you're more caught up in it. It feels true. We're looking more, again, at the content, the stories. We're hearing it. It's like, it's just thicker. It's a thicker fog, and we're less aware that we're in fog. During the day, when you're feeling great, other times, we're always in a fog of thought to some extent. It's just that maybe it's a thinner fog, and maybe we have a little more insight into that. We kind of see, okay, I'm just feeling my thinking. We're less caught up in it. So the same thing, you know, we don't think any differently. Our experience doesn't come to life any differently at 3 o'clock in the morning than it does at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's just that we can get a little more caught up in it in those times. So your real question is about what to do. So it's like, all right, I put in my iPod, put in my headphones, listen to a book on my iPod, and that distracts you from some of that thinking, so you get to fall back asleep. Okay, that's great. But then you say, should I face these thoughts and learn to not be afraid of them? And whether that might be a cure. Well, yeah. I'm not saying anything about the iPod. So the behavior isn't so important. It's not that we do something and then suddenly we see life differently. What changes things for us is not exposure, is not the right behavior, is not getting rid of the iPod and facing our fears and doing that. It's understanding. So should you lie awake with nothing, no noise, no distraction, and just swim in this mind full of habitual negative thoughts? I don't know. If you do that with no understanding, I don't think anything's going to be better. I would think in that case, you know, if you're not seeing this thinking for what it is and you're just swimming in it, that's going to suck. And no, you probably don't want to do that. That's probably exactly why you reach for your iPod, to distract yourself from it, because you don't see it for what it is. It looks and feels true to you. So grabbing the iPod, that kind of makes sense. That's you know, maybe your common sense saying, hey, given the way that this looks and feels, this is the best I have. And that's what our habits are, right? I mean, it's our best attempt to feel better given our level of understanding and seeing in that moment. So is exposure, in a sense, you know, is setting the iPod aside and saying, okay, not going to listen, I'm just going to lay here in my thinking, going to help? Not ultimately, not in a deep, lasting way, because it's just going through the motions. What's going to help is continuing to look in this direction of, who are you at 3:25 when you're peacefully asleep and you're feeling okay? And what's going on at 3:30, 5 minutes later, when you're awake and feeling horrible? You haven't changed. Life hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed is that you're caught up in an illusion that looks and feels really, really true. And as far as the iPod, you'll figure that out. You will, as you see more about this, as you get less caught up in the content of all of that thinking and the stickiness of it and the feeling and judging the feeling of it, it tends to just feel more like life moving through you. Like, this sounds crazy, but it's very possible, very, very kind of common and doable to feel emotion like that, and to just feel it as energy coming through without our mind in there saying, oh, it's because of this. I can't believe you did that yesterday, and this is going to happen. Without all that, we're just feeling energy moving through us. We're just alive. We're just feeling what it feels like to be alive. But then, of course, we don't often feel it that way. Our mind comes in and starts telling those old stories. So the more you see that, and it truly just looks like, oh, that's my mind telling those same old low self-esteem stories again. That's not me. That's just my conceptual mind woke up and went into its old pattern. I'm the peacefulness that was just asleep a minute ago, feeling great, and you keep seeing more and more about that distinction. Who you are, what's stable, what's always there versus what's always changing and mean and sometimes negative and sometimes positive and all over the place. That's not the place to get caught up. The more you see about that and you feel into that deeper grounding of who you really are and you see the thinking for what it is, what to do when you wake up is just going to take care of itself. I mean, there will be no need really for any kind of distraction because that will just look like no big deal. It'll look very, very different to you. So the iPod thing's gonna just kind of clear out on its own. But should you, as you say, learn to face these thoughts and not be afraid of them? Yes. But not by laying there in exposure, by really getting a deeper understanding of where our experience comes from and what's really true. So I hope this has been helpful, Jane. And I hope it's been helpful for others of you out there. I know lots of people have I can't fall back asleep and my mind's racing and lots of stuff around that, lots of self-esteem stuff around that too. So I was really excited to get this question and have the opportunity to speak to some of these things. So if you want to see more about who you are and what's true of you before that habitual thought system wakes up, join the waitlist at the Little School of Big Change, and we'll be opening up the doors in October. And if you have questions that you'd like to send, please send them to askamy@thelittleschoolofbigchange.com. And I'll see you back here next Monday at 1 o'clock Eastern. Thanks for being here.